The Building Brands podcast is dedicated to exploring the journeys of industry leaders who have successfully built a brand. Join me, Robert Royer, president of Building Brands Marketing, and an entrepreneur who has successfully scaled multiple brands as we dive deep into the strategies, challenges, and insights that have shaped the success of industry leaders and provide you with the resources you need to do the same. Building Brands Marketing is a full-service marketing agency specializing in crafting customized marketing strategies for service-based businesses with the creative powerhouse to drive real results. Welcome to the Building Brands Podcast. Welcome to the Legal Leaders series of the Building Brands Podcast. Today, we welcome Madhu. Sorry, let me redo that. I almost said Madhu again.
Madhu. Yeah, you actually said it really well now, so...
Okay.
You got it.
All right. Welcome to the Legal Leaders series of the Building Brands Podcast. Today, we welcome Madhu, owner and attorney with the Foundry Law Group. Welcome.
Thank you.
Perfect, Madhu. Well, tell us, what inspired you to start the Foundry Law Group? And how did your personal background in law shape the firm's direction over the last decade and a half?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So originally I had started the firm just as a solo practice, and like most attorneys kind of did the whole name thing, and it was just called M.K. Singh Law. And I realized that when you're kind of junior and starting something, you kind of see what else is out there and you just kind of follow suit. But I quickly realized that really what I wanted to do was something different, and I didn't have to do what the standard norm was out there. The bar association's like, you need to have an office space, you need to have all of these software, you need to have this, that, and the other. But we were also now in the age of co-working spaces coming out and social media and different ways of marketing and things like that. I was like, why? We don't need to do any of that anymore. I don't see consulting businesses or podcast businesses, which were not even really around at that time, like 15 years ago, really thinking that way. And so I kind of flipped the script a little bit and I was like, what do I want to be known for? I want to be known for building something and helping people create something. And much like a foundry, it's very age-old tradition where people are building and growing things. And I wanted to create like a group of attorneys who were like-minded and very collaborative and operated with this kind of business forward thinking principles. And so we evolved into Foundry Law Group pretty quickly thereafter. And a lot of my background in this is because I kind of come from an entrepreneurial family. My dad's a small business owner, a successful one at that, and grew that also with kind of his own pathway into that space, which was a kind of a traditional industry as well. But for me, I have both a law degree and a business background. And so I used kind of those principles and modeled myself after businesses that I admired, not so much law firms who were still kind of in a more traditional structure. So I think with all of that, just really allowed me the freedom, kind of being on my own practice, to really make it what I wanted to be and make it something that I wanted to be known for in terms of building a brand and a concept for the work that I wanted to do and the clients I wanted to attract and work with me as well, who are also novel people doing really interesting things.
Yeah, well, it makes a lot of sense because Foundry Law Group is, your original practice location was in Seattle. So it's on the West Coast and, more of a progressive part of the country. So it makes sense to, kind of break from the traditional norms. I know that for me, when I started building brands in 2018, it was very similar. Like there's a lot of, when you look at service-based industries, sometimes you can pull best practices from other service-based industries that may not be in the same exact niche. And so looking outside of like the standard evolution of your exact niche can be really, really impactful and helpful. For example, in the agency business, most people that found agencies start with a more sales-centric focus. And they focus on, okay, let's hire some salespeople, build out a sales team, be able to go get the revenue, and then we'll build the fulfillment team over time. In the meantime, we'll contract it out to freelancers. And, we went down the opposite route of, hey, let's not have a salesperson for a couple of years. Let's focus on a fulfillment-centric team internally. And then when the time is right, flip the switch to expand, exponentially for salespeople at the time. Now, that's one, kind of going against the grain model in the agency business. I've seen this a lot in the law business. And I know one of the things in your background that's unique and, really an added value and advantage, I would say, is having the business degree and the law degree, because there are a lot of lawyers and doctors for that matter that are very good at that profession, but may not, they'll be the first to say they may not be the most experienced or confident business owner. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's very true. So I have the joint degree, the JD MBA. There's a number of schools that offer it, but it's interesting because even 15 years later, I still find it not as popular as what I think it should be. For me, if you're advising companies, they go very hand in hand. Like you need to
Yeah.
know what experiences they're having. And a lot of people choose, I think, sometimes to work with us because the perspective I'm coming to the table with is also as a business owner. Like just yesterday, I was watching this thread where this organization they had kind of a friend that they wanted to handle some piece of IP work, and the way they decided to describe it, it by the end of her description, it was going to be $40,000, and I was like, you just started, you don't know that that's what your brand is going to be, or you're going to like want to also own all of these different things just yet. Like you only have a limited budget when you're a new company. Like be mindful of that. Like you can always come back to it, and nothing that we're going to do, like just go with maybe one pathway or a narrow scope, something that's affordable that'll get you on the right path, and we can always come back to it. And so this is where like it really highlights the difference because lawyers can come up with 100 things for you to do to overdo all these things,
Sure,
but
sure.
uh half the time like they can be done strategically over time in a planned way and in a way that's actually helpful to your business. Like I really try to cautious people, like let's be great about this timeline because money is better spent on your marketing, on your sales, to have the revenues to then have this problem like, oh, I need to hire someone, or I need to do this. But like asking me to set up all your employment agreements and handbooks and everything when the likelihood of you hiring an employee is like 2 years out just doesn't make sense. And so like I think that's a lot of what I experienced working in other law firms happening. And I was like, I just don't want to operate this way. I feel like business owners, especially new ones, they don't need all this. They need someone who's practical and making sure they're looking out for them and they have all the parameters that they need to protect their company in a way that doesn't feel like overkill, like that they actually can go out and do what they need to do. And it happens quite often. And I feel for those people. And it's just, I think that's why there's a special niche for firms like myself, kind of being out there just as an alternative to growing companies and startups and enterprises that kind of who also have similar principles.
I think you're absolutely right. Like there's a focus, what I'm hearing from you is there's a focus on results and results in relationships over revenue. And
Mhm.
the reality is, when you're focused on those two elements, the revenue will work itself out over time, provided that you have good business infrastructure in place in terms of pricing and tracking and
So
utilization. And
you think you said something very important that I run into as a lot of backlash from colleagues in my industry in the legal world is the revenue will work itself out. I fully believe that. I fully believe that all of these things balance out eventually, and there's enough business around for everyone. And there isn't this like I don't have this overwhelming desire to get paid for every minute of my life that I'm thinking about something. But the backlash I get is we have a unique business model in that we do fixed fee engagements, which is I understand is not unusual, but we also have a really unique subscription model that allows us to grow with our clients. And the pushback I get and kind of is always like, well, how do you know that it's covering all of your time? How do you know that this is happening? Why are you giving out free advice? Why are you doing these seminars? Why do you even do free initial consults? Like that alone is like a big debate in the
yeah,
world that I'm in, and even in my own mastermind group with other law firms. And it's really fascinating the perspective because I just realized how I never thought of myself as having a unique perspective, but I really do believe, like you do, that the revenue works itself out and everything kind of balances out in a way that's meaningful and doesn't feel like so stressful for me because I don't want to carry all that stress either of like making people. And I also don't want to work with people I don't want to work with. Like, I'm not going to charge someone with a consult to be like, feel the pressure that I have to work with them. Like, what if we're just not a good fit? But I realize that principle doesn't apply in every department, but that's how I feel.
definitely. And I think that you're also in a niche that in business law and B2B. that is more long term in terms of return on investment from new client acquisition compared to, say, a criminal law attorney where it might be more one off revenue. Hey, I'm going to represent this one case and this may never be a client again. So, those little things that you're describing, that you were alluding to three or 4 minutes ago, as far as, hey, not overselling them at the very onset, not selling them things they don't need right now, maybe taking more of a phased approach,
Right.
builds a lot of additional trust that will not only obviously increase the likelihood of securing that client as a lifetime client, but also increase the referral likelihood of other referral opportunities through that client, because this is such a your niche of law is such a referral based section of law. You're not saying that there's not a lot of good marketing strategies for new client acquisition, but the referral base opportunity is a major opportunity. But I want to segue a different direction for a second, Madhu. So I we talk about progressive and opening up in Seattle, and some of the unique differentiators you did in progressive components with Foundry Law Firm in that market. And then I know you have opened up in the Midwest now in Kansas City, which is a whole different market from Seattle, and also a good metro market that's doing well economically. So I'm curious, what challenges have you experienced thus far opening a new office in Kansas City in the Midwest?
That's a really great question. I kind of anticipated this challenge a little bit, but I guess I did now that it's like right in front of me, it's harder. Is that it's a very close knit community, and the network is very small. And because it's very small, there's only honestly there's only like maybe three players in the same field I'm in. So it's ripe for opportunity to bring a lot of my experience in working with early stage companies to here, especially in Kansas City. There's a whole focus on tech forward companies and healthcare tech and all this stuff. And there's a lot of activity going on. Um, and and that's a lot of what I do. And so like I feel like there's this great opportunity. But what I'm running into is people have these established networks, or they have these established relationships that they are not necessarily ready to move away from yet, which is fine. And they're not actually really that open to adding to it either. So like I can't tell if it's because I am like, oh, this is a Seattle person coming to the Midwest trying to tell us what to do type thing, or it's like we already have people doing this and talking about it and it's worked out pretty well. We don't know that we need more. And that's the thing that I'm not sure, but I feel like it's more the latter. Like I think people are just realizing in this community that they're not as aware of the alternatives that exist. They're used to still the hourly model. They're used to still bigger law firms. They're not used to like a startup focused law firm in that just exists there, and that assuming that there's even enough business for that startup firm to even like contribute in a meaningful way. And so that part of it is interesting because even getting the clients we do here have here to be like, no, this is going to be a fixed rate. This is all it's going to cost you. They struggle with that. They're like, wait, what's the hourly that goes with this? I was like, no, this is
Yeah,
not how it's going to work. And so it takes time. And so it'll take a little
yeah,
while for me to like push this forward and make things um, make sense in this way. And I think one of the things that I'm not able to also break into that well, that I was, for some reason, given how populated with Seattle, it seemed very easy to do this there, but connect with organizations that are actually supporting the same community to be involved in them in some way that allows me to showcase my background and also connect with people. So in Seattle, I could call any organization and would be like, "Hey, I want to do this event. Do you think your group would be interested?" And they'd always say yes. I never got a no. And then here, I'm not even getting responses. And I'm like,
yeah,
are there just and but I find that interesting because there can't be that many people coming to organizations to be like, hey, I will help co-host, I'll do all of these things and help push this forward. But they're kind of stuck in their like, oh no, we only do it this way, or we only are gonna have this
yeah,
set up this way. And it's totally fine. It's just the challenge for me is that what I thought would be just as easy here is just not. And I have to kind of think about how I'm making these connections and where I can get some warm leads. But I do remind people I'm actually from Kansas. Like I grew up here. Like this is still my community that I'm from. And I feel like I
yeah.
sometimes lose that in the conversation because the firm is based out of Seattle. And so like I'm still working
Yeah.
through how to navigate those two conversations.
Well, what you're doing is different, right? Different means change. Change
Yeah.
means more time. More time is scary to business owners,
Yeah.
right? So, like, that whole sequence of events just causes a little bit of extra caution. I do think it's something with more time that will stick more and more as you've been in the market longer and you're
Mhm.
building those relationships. I see a lot of opportunity in the market that you're operating in because of all those small to mid-sized markets that are surrounding Kansas City, going into central Kansas and everything in between,
Mhm.
you know? Typically
Yeah.
a lot of those towns and smaller cities, there's only one, two, maybe three general practices that are doing everything,
Mhm.
and they probably have more of the outdated model that you're describing because they can, they've leveraged relationships for a long time. So I see a lot of opportunity there. I'm curious, what marketing strategies are you thinking need to be deployed in Kansas City and in the Kansas market that would differ from Seattle that you think will be successful?
I think I need to find some outlet to share some of the my perspective on how some of these businesses should be thinking about how they're growing their companies. Something as simple as incorporation, right?
Hmm.
And if these are early stage companies and they're kind of tech forward and they have plans to raise money and go seek out investors, whether it be in the Midwest, East Coast, West Coast, or whatever, there is some strategy behind how you make these decisions and how you set up the company. The handful or so clients that I've worked with here that are in that space, I was a little shocked to hear the advice that they received on some of those things. And they were like, yeah, it backfired when so and so sold their company because they didn't do this and they didn't know about that. I'm like, this is not okay because this means that the business attorneys that, they're just used to advising general businesses are not really
Hmm.
thinking about how different a startup business is that is in this although technically they're both new businesses, the word startup comes with this connotation that it's tech uh,
Yeah.
focused, and it's come with this connotation that there's like VCs after it or angels or whatever it is, But there's strategy behind all that, and there's some pre-planning you need to do to set yourself up for success and to set the team that you are taking along on the journey with you for success. The last thing you want is like to have this great successful maybe exit and every single person involved has a ginormous tax bill because none of this thought was put into the process early on. And it's not that these attorneys aren't perfectly capable and can handle it. They're maybe just not experiencing it as often as someone coming from like, doing this for however many years in Seattle, where it's just daily
Yeah.
conversations, and things like that. And yes, ChatGPT is there and other like research tools are there, and they're all directing people in this way. But I have found that some of the experiences that I'm hearing from just the clients I'm taking on is that they're not getting that same perspective. And so I wanted to find an outlet where I could share some of that perspective that not in a way that's like what you heard before is wrong. It's not wrong. It's still correct. You're still fine in terms of a corporate level and doing these things. But are you best set up for success that you're looking for the future? And so like I want to be able to do these things. So I think I need to find more understand what outlets people are using to learn this information, like,
Hmm.
where are they going to figure this information out? And
Yeah.
I can't quite pinpoint where they're going to figure that information out because when I talk to people here and I go to networking events and things like that, I'm not getting any real clear directive, like where this information is coming from. And so, like, I
Yeah.
even went to um, leaders and I went to the one VC here that's really popular. And again, same thing, just not getting clear directive where they're going. Because that's where you, in my opinion, in marketing start from. Like, where are people going to learn this information? That's where you need to be talking about it and then work backwards from there.
Correct.
So the challenge for me is trying to determine where that piece is in this
Yeah.
market, Seattle. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I talk about it all the time in marketing. It's like algebra. I define what is the ideal end result and then start working it backwards.
Yeah.
I train my staff daily on that metaphor. Now, so for me, there's three components that come to mind in your market, and I think I told you this. Of course, a lot of the listeners and viewers are aware of this. My family is all from a small town in Kansas called Abilene, Kansas. My mother, father are both from there. Several generations of my family. My family owns the oldest law firm in Kansas, Royer and Royer Chartered Lawyers, which is about 20 miles away from Salina. Would be the next name recognizable, I guess, city. Anyway, in smaller markets like that, first of all, creating strategic partnerships would be my first suggestion. So I think looking at like a good economic development corporation in the area, maybe the Kansas City one, or maybe it's a Manhattan or one of the close cities nearby, where there you start embedding yourself in some of those meetings, some of those luncheons, things like that. Find a board opportunity to join a board with one of those economic development corporations. I think that could go a long way, and aligning with other strategic partnerships in the area that would be around business owners, because the relationships will spread so quickly after 9 months, 12 months of greasing the wheels a little bit.
Yeah.
And then secondly, with that, those relationships lead to workshop opportunities, things like that. I think I would tell a story of, hey, I I would paint, because this is the story. I would paint the story of born born here in Kansas, went over to Seattle, did some really successful things in law, founded my own firm, came back to Kansas to bring my experiences, successes, and life cycle of the business infrastructure that I've experienced to here. So I can, kind of get ahead of the curve to these businesses here and bring this knowledge to businesses here that maybe others couldn't, because they haven't been on both sides of the spectrum.
Mhm.
And I see that being a really valuable workshop webinar series. You could go present it in person, establish one set of a presentation that you go and you talk about these nuances, such as developing. There are so many startups in Kansas that are startups. They don't have the tech component. They may be service-based businesses, so on and so forth, that will come upon, PE firms are buying home services businesses left and right across the country right now. So you could, with a concept like that, you could go and offer that value driving content to audiences in the area. Now, I think that small business development centers would be a key area where there's some synergy, if there are any, throughout the communities there, because you could offer some free webinars perhaps, and they would be biting at the chump to get a licensed attorney to come in and do a free webinar to some of their clients. I would suspect.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and then finding those synergistic relationships, now you have really good value driving content that you can repurpose in a number of ways through Facebook ads, Google ads, programmatic advertising, so on and so forth. And that's like a starting three-prong approach that I could see working in a market like that probably wouldn't be as advantageous in a market such as Seattle, Washington. I think that you bring a lot of value, a lot of knowledge to a market that really deserves, and I think can benefit from it quite well, because economically speaking, it's a good market to be in. So I'm
Mhm.
curious, are there any final, before we close out the show, Madhu, are there any final words of advice you would give other, not just law firm owners, but service-based entrepreneurs or executives in general?
That's a good question. I think that that you as the business owner, it's sometimes forgotten because you're in a particular industry that you have to do things a certain way. Aside from what your license requirements are, and ethically, I guess, like really like finding what makes sense for your brand and who you are, and presenting it that way is way easier than trying to fit into the box that maybe you were told that this is where the box goes. Like when a like everything about your brand should kind of fit. Like it shouldn't, in my opinion, I think that I really feel like it's important that the reputation and the way that you present yourself, whether it be through a podcast or your website or in person, should all be the same. It shouldn't be like we're having this conversation and then you visit my website and you see like me in front of a whole bunch of law books and the weighing scales of justice. Like that's not who I
Yeah.
am. And that's shouldn't it should all be a consistent story. And so I really feel like if you have a consistent story and you kind of stick to kind of like who you are in all of that and the consistency of all that, eventually it'll pay off when the time comes, and all those seeds will make a difference. So even now I tell people that I mentor in this capacity, the people and the events and the workshops and the things I used to do like 15 years ago still show up today. Those, for some reason, people are like, oh yeah, I remember so and so. I'm like, that was like 10 years ago. How do you still
Yeah.
have that? But at the time, the return might not be immediate, but all of these things play together. And so, like, if you're willing to play the long game, the return is there, and it'll come to fruition when the timing is right for you, and maybe for that person who's looking to engage with you. And I also, my last piece is like, don't stop trying things and don't stop learning things, because so much changes all the time. You know, obviously the newest thing is AI. And just because you've been doing things a certain way for so long, don't be so bullheaded not to learn the next thing, because it will help you as you continue to grow.
Yeah, consistency, growth. I couldn't have said it better myself. Madhu, you've obviously had a tremendous level of success. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I look forward to continuing the conversation in the future. Where can our listeners and viewers learn more about the Foundry Law Group online?
Great, thank you. So we're at foundrylawgroup.com. It's FOUNDRY lawgroup.com. We're also at Foundry Law on Twitter and on LinkedIn and Facebook. But I feel the website really captures the most about us, because we have a lot of daily, or I shouldn't say daily, I should say more like weekly content, just kind of talking about all these different topics that really apply to businesses. And so I think that's a place that you can kind of learn how we operate and kind of a bit about our style and our team. So thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's been a great discussion.
Thanks, Madhu. Appreciate you being here.